Hello and welcome to Q Sports. I'm Umudu Gajaga and thank you for joining us. Coming up this afternoon, the Gambia national team, the Scorpions, and the coach, Jonathan McKinstry, has unveiled his squad to face Madagascar in a double-leg tie of the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers Morocco 2025. Currently, Gambia sits in third place in the group standings, just with a single point and equal with Madagascar, who are on the bottom of the table, but the points, there are no differences. But hopefully, sometime next week, we will see some differences in the table again, whether it's going to be in favor of the Gambia or Madagascar, or something will definitely change. And in the other side, it's going to be Tunisia and Comoros, who will also have a double leg. So lots of significance in this group. And when it comes to the squad unveiling, I was there on Thursday at the football house, and this is what happened at the squad unveiling. Scorpions head coach Jonathan McKinstry has chosen a 23-man squad to face Madagascar in the upcoming two-legged 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers in Morocco on October 11th and 14th. Souley Camara of Racing Santander is added to the squad for the first time, and Mohamed Badamosi, Mahmoudou Badjo and Jacob Mendy, who missed the previous selections against Tunisia, returned. Scorpions regular Ibrahim Okoli, who plays for Young Boys in Switzerland and also played 73 minutes against Barcelona in the Champions League on Tuesday, is missing this time. Coach McKinstry explains.
So it's very simple for Ibrahima. I was actually at the Young Boys Barcelona game a couple of days ago, and Ibrahima and I have been speaking over the last week or two. Basically, Ibrahima has requested to not be considered for this camp alone because he has some personal issues that he really needs to attend to. And even speaking with his club Young Boys, they're aware of that. I'm not going to go into deeper context on them because personal things are personal things.
Under Jonathan McKinstry, the Scorpions have played some exciting football and created a lot of goal-scoring chances without capitalizing on them. The team has also displayed a tendency to concede from set pieces, such as free kicks and corners. They have been poor defensively in recent matches, especially in aerial duels. The coach acknowledges the weakness.
But we need to be cleaner around the penalty box. There's no doubt about that. You know, we're creating a lot of chances. You know, our passes into the final third, our box entries, our expected goals are all a lot higher than they've been over recent years. Defensively, we've got to tidy up on set pieces. But it's interesting because in the two camps we've done so far, it's been two different issues in set pieces. Because in the first camp, the issue was defending crosses, which we worked on a bit in the second camp in the short time. And actually, that was not an issue at all from set pieces against Comoros or Tunisia from corners and from wide delivery free kicks. We were pretty comfortable.
Some young players like Mahmoudou Badjo and Abdoulaye Cissé, who are in fine form at their clubs, are yet to get a chance under McKinstry. What would it take for youngsters to break into the team in a competition?
So when you have someone like Abdoulaye Cissé who comes into the national team, we were really pleased with him in the last camp. But he still is evolving and developing that connection with the teammates around him. Historically, for me, players who come to their very first national team camp don't usually get lots of minutes. Sometimes they do if they're a really high quality player, if they turn up and hey, they have a 10 out of 10 week and they're just the best player in the training sessions, then yes, they get their minutes.
The Gambia and Madagascar are third and fourth in the Group A standings respectively, on a point each after two matches. A win for the Scorpions in both matches could see them a step closer to their third consecutive Africa Cup of Nations, depending on what happens between the Comoros and Tunisia. And when it comes to Gambia-Madagascar, the two matches are set on these dates. On the 11th, that's on a Friday of October, and on Monday, the 14th of October. Both matches will be played in Morocco, which seems to be the home ground for Gambian football for the past 2-3 years, if you like, because the Independence Stadium still is not fit to host international matches unless the renovation work is completed and the Confederation of African Football gives the green light for matches to resume at the stadium. Well, joining me in the studio is Adedarame, has been following proceedings of Gambian football and, was following also the coach's unveiling of the squad. He talked about so many things. What did you pick from what he said?
Watched it live, and what I picked up was he's somebody who's very thorough in terms of his preparation, in terms of what he knows about players, and it seems as if he's in touch with his players wherever they are. And I guess for those who he doesn't call up, he lets them know why they haven't been called up. And we heard there him saying, about one player, it's personal and I don't need to reveal. And he doesn't need to reveal what the personal reasons are. But it's a nicely balanced squad. Sometimes we watch these and we're all guilty of, rather than concentrating on the squad, we concentrate on those who are not there. But I don't think this time there was too much of that. There were a couple of questions from the floor which sort of dealt with that, but trust, these were people who hadn't done their research, really. But yes, he's obviously very thorough in his preparations, and he's picked a good squad, strong squad. I don't think many people can complain, and there are no glaring omissions. There are players that you and I discussed who decided they didn't want to play for the Gambia. So, rightly, they weren't contacted or they're not called up. If you don't want to play, then, go your own way. It's a good squad, strong one.
Despite us wanting to put it away when it comes to Ibrahim Adabo's issue, when players give reasons, of course, genuine reasons to coaches, it is not as if they don't want to play for their country. This is a player who has always turned up. He's played for us in AFCON, has played for us in qualifiers, have given his best, and right now he's one of the informed players. Of course, he would be missing in a certain way.
He's a big miss.
He's a big miss, of course.
But you're right, we have to respect the person's decision, because whenever he's been called up, he's turned up and he's played well. And it's a big miss, but for whatever reason, I think, if somebody says they're private or personal, I think we have to respect that, and I think that's the case. And I think the coach dealt with it quickly, because I think people wanted to say, "Oh, did he tell you?" Well,
exactly.
He probably told him, but it's not for him to tell us.
It's not for him to tell us.
It's not for our ears. It's none of our business.
Definitely.
As I said, sometimes we concentrate on who's not there. But what we should be looking at is who is there, and do we think the ones who have been called up can perform and can do the job. It's going to be tough, because Madagascar, after exactly what we're after, they're on a single point, and they need to, and of course, as you said in your intro there, we're kind of playing in what is now our home away from home in Morocco. There's no atmosphere, there's no crowd, and we miss that, and we can't wait for the Independence Stadium to be renovated and given the sort of all clear, so the games can be held there in a packed stadium. And I think for me the tragedy is this is a time when Gambia has a fantastic crop of players, exciting crop of players, and the fans want to see them up close rather than just on the TV. It's not the same thing at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the things at the press conference that we decided to focus on, the coach was asked about certain questions from the press. Poor defense. Gambia concede rather very awkward goals. We know, yes, when it comes to crosses, corner kicks, we call them, of course, the football language, set pieces.
Set pieces.
Yes, those set piece
free kicks and
situations.
corners,
Yeah, these have been consistently the problem of the Gambia. Well, he said he's going to deal with it. He's realized the problem. And in that question, his response, first about the poor defense of the Gambia.
Got to tidy up on set pieces. But it's interesting because in the two camps we've done so far, it's been two different issues in set pieces. Because in the first camp, the issue was defending crosses, which we worked on a bit in the second camp in the short time, and actually that was not an issue at all from set pieces against Comoros or Tunisia from corners and from wide delivery free kicks. We were pretty comfortable. So we nailed that issue that had presented itself in June, but then a new issue cropped up was the direct free kicks, that maybe the organisation of the wall, the numbers in the wall, the numbers marking for the second chance. wasn't as tidy as it needed to be and as clear as it needed to be. So all set pieces, but actually two different issues arised in June and in September. But we need to be tighter on that, because for me, I'm a big person on set pieces. You know, if you look at my teams in the past, we score a lot of set pieces and we don't concede many. And so to have conceded a set piece in every game is something we need to do a lot better on, and we're going to be, again, putting a big emphasis on it in this training camp to make sure, because if we cut those 4 goals out, we probably have a lot more points than we otherwise would have, you know what I mean? And so that's a big thing. And for me, you know, it's interesting, you know, you're asking about specific player sort of profile roles. But if I were to ask everyone, we must have 25, 30 people in this room. So you talk about, you know, a number 6. If I ask everybody in this room to write down the qualities of a number 6, I think we would have 25 pieces of paper with 25 different profiles written on it, because there's lots of different number 6s. I think, you know, in Ebu Adams, I think we've got a very good guy who can play in that role. Obviously, we welcome Saidou Khan and Mamadou Badjo into this squad as well. Both of them have the potential to play in that deeper role because they can be aggressive to win the ball. But what we want is players who can play both sides of the game. You know, we don't want someone who can just tackle and do nothing else, because when you win the ball, you need to have the ability to play the passes forward, to make the runs. And it's the same. You talk about, you know, you asked a question about more defensive players on the pitch. But what does that mean? You know, because does that mean players who can protect their own penalty box? But then are they able to go and press the game? You know what I mean? You can't have, in football, you cannot have everything. You cannot be a team who don't allow space behind you and go and press high. You have to choose. Do you want to go and press high, or do you want to sit in a low block? You can't play a low block and a high block at the same time. And so for us, we make choices about how we play. I think you saw over the last 2 games how those choices can be modified, not changed, but modified, because the height of our team in terms of playing position on the field against Comoros was different than it was against Tunisia. In Tunisia, we dropped off a little bit more. We didn't go into a low block, but we probably came back 15 meters on the pitch. And so it's about having guys who can play both sides of the game, offense and defense. It's about guys who ultimately work for each other as well, because, you know, you're not going to say to a number 6, hey, you've got this 15 by 15 box, never leave it. Because sometimes he's got to leave it. He's got to go and deal with a problem or an opportunity. And when he does that, someone else needs to be intelligent enough to come in and cover that space. So, you know, for me, I like what we've got. We've got some really exciting young players who are going to come through and push some of the senior players as well. But you also got to remember, international football is not club football. If you were the coach of Real Madrid and you needed a certain type of profile in a player, you simply get your checkbook out and say, here's 100 million euros, I want to bring that player to my club. You don't get to do that in international football. You get to assess what is available to you and use what you think can come together in a good way.
Talking about defense, you and I screamed in this office a lot of times when we concede those kind of goals.
Cheap goals, I think you call them.
Sometimes
we would all call them.
Unacceptable kind of, because this would be well-organized defensive formation when there is a corner kick, each to a person, and then, you know, you watch the ball. Sometimes the goalkeepers would also gauge the ball very well, and they would kind of snatch the ball away from the head of the players, the opposing players who were trying to score.
Yeah.
So in that situation, we've conceded many of those. Yes, he said they're going to deal with it, but it seems still a problem that persists.
Football is a strange sport. Arsenal, for all the good they've done in the last couple of seasons in the English Premier League, when they didn't win but they came second in consecutive years, when you hear commentators talk about them, they always say, why do they concede so many goals from corners? This is a team that's done very well. I said they haven't won anything yet, but they've played fantastic football. It can happen. Yesterday I watched Leeds, Sunderland. Meslier, the Leeds keeper, had a fantastic game. Simple ball was coming towards him to collect it, and it bounced everybody was horrified. You and I are not goalkeepers. We could have held that ball, and it ended up with just seconds to go. The game that made it 2-2. Otherwise, they would have won against the leaders, Sunderland, in the championship. So it can happen. But he's right. When you have these situations, you must first of all look at your opponents. Are they good at free kicks? Are they good at corners? And then you pick your team to face them according to that. What are their strengths that you need to counter? Because it's not just about, oh, I've got attacking players and I need to just throw them out there and they'll blow everybody away. We've seen that. Hasn't quite happened. And, we smiled because when Tom Samphier was playing what we said was defensive football, we didn't score many, but we didn't concede many either.
Yeah.
So it's like, we can't have our cake and eat it. It's something that you have to guard against. And as he said he will deal with it. The talk is cheap. The match will be the revelation. Has he dealt with it? Or have our opponents seen that as a weakness that they can capitalize on? Or are these just lapses? And just very quickly, you heard him there talking about a number 6. For anybody who's been watching football for only the last 30 years, for about 100 years of football, a football team that went on the pitch, they had on their backs from number 1 to number 11. None of this fancy number 99, number 45, and so on. And the positions that they used to have reflected those numbers. Your number 7 was a winger. Your number 8 was a winger. Your 9 and 10 were forwards. Because, people played kind of standard formations. But when formations but those initial positions.
Yes. That's what I used to know.
That's
as a little kid. So, and then that was like in the 90s. It used to be even quite popular even at that time.
This is it.
Yeah.
And then now you hear people referring to the number. So a number 10 is probably somebody who is the playmaker in midfield and so on. So if anybody's listening, what do they mean by a number 10? They're talking about a specific position that used to be the positions of days of old. But,
and number 6 would be defensive midfielder. Yeah, or they call it holding midfielder.
Midfielder. Yeah. And so he was talking there about people wanting a number 6. And he made the very valid point. Do you want somebody who is just a kind of what they used to call a destroyer. Somebody who breaks up the play. But isn't very good at the transition in terms of playing forward and taking the ball forward. So you have to balance. You have to have somebody who displays a kind of a bit of both. They can't just be one thing or another because, you need to attack as well as defend. Yeah.
Definitely. Very, very important. And when it comes to the other aspect of the team is creating the chances, having opportunities, but failing to bury
taking them. Failing to take the chances. They're being created.
Yes.
And he, I think the word he was searching for was clinical.
Yes.
We need to be more clinical in front of goal because you're squandering chances and you end up paying for it. We sit here and we think, oh, how did they miss that? And before you know it, the other side have gone down the other side, maybe not seconds later, but a minute or two later. The fact that you didn't capitalize on your chance, they've capitalized on their opportunity and they've scored.
Definitely.
And so you need that clinical thing. It's, again, you and I follow Manchester United. It's the one thing United don't have at the moment is a clinical finisher. They go out and buy people like Xerxes and Højlund. They're not clinical finishers. They're most they've ever scored in a season is like 12. You want people who've scored 20 and above.
20 and above, definitely.
Before they were born.
As a striker.
Yeah.
And also there is an issue of when it comes to creating the chances and failing to convert them. The coach also talked about how difficult it is these days to get international friendlies because the FIFA international window is already congested with competitions, with qualifiers. From here to next year, there is almost no certain free date. They are all competitive matches because it's all qualifiers, either World Cup qualifiers, AFCON qualifiers. You have them in Asia. Europe also are playing either Nations League or something like that. Let's get the coach's response on goals and also friendlies.
So I think firstly, everybody, it's not just me, who is disappointed that we're not scoring more goals. The players themselves are disappointed because at club level, some of our players are in hot form at club level. But look, I said this earlier in the press conference, I'm really pleased that the game is on Friday. last time when we play on Wednesday, that connection just doesn't quite develop as much. You know what I mean? It's a bit like, and I know you guys might say, oh, but, you know, Musa Barrow and Ali Sow have known each other played together for 10 years. But it's a little bit like, say you owned a car 5 years ago, yeah? And you haven't driven it for 5 years, and you've been driving a completely different type of car. Or maybe you've been driving a left-hand drive car for 5 years, and all of a sudden you get back into a right-hand drive car. On day 1 and day 2, it feels strange, not so? It's like, oh, I need to get used to this again. It's the same thing when you come back to your national team, because you got to remember, every day in training, you know, Musa's training with his players in his club in Saudi, Ali's training with his players in Turkey, you know, Aliu in Italy, so they get used to all those movements and just the rhythm of the game. And then they come back together, and for the last camp, for example, leading into Comoros, they had one 55-minute training session to try to get used to driving the car again, yeah? And so you can understand why it's not maybe at 100%. And so for us, we're really pleased that the game's a bit later in the window. For me, I think all international games should be at their earliest on the Friday. I think playing an international match on a Wednesday is harmful to African football, because we want our teams to go and play well at AFCON and World Cups, but the European teams don't play on a Wednesday. You don't see England or Spain being asked to play on the Wednesday after one day's training. They always play on the Friday, the Saturday, and then again on the Tuesday. Whereas for us, we're being asked to play on a Wednesday and then a Sunday, which means in the entire training camp, we had 3 training sessions. So this time we're going to have more. So we expect the connection between the players to be better against Madagascar, and we expect to be able, to use that car analogy, to really accelerate. Okay? You ask about test games. The nature of international football now is changing. If you can tell me, if you look at the FIFA calendar for the next 2 years, the only window that doesn't have competitive games in it at this moment in time is next June. Because we have games in October, no space for friendlies. November, no space for friendlies. March, no space for friendlies. Yes, June, there's nothing fixed because they had to move AFCON. Okay? But FIFA also, because they've got their Club World Cup going on, they might say, hey, you're not allowed to play internationals in June. We don't know yet. Okay? September, no space for friendlies. October, no space for friendlies. November is the playoffs. So depends if you're in the World Cup playoffs or not, if there's space for friendlies. So 10 years ago, there used to be space for friendlies. But now there's not. And you even see now that, okay, CAF don't have a Nations League yet, but what we have started seeing is the FIFA series, which you saw coming in March, where some teams go and play these little mini tournaments against, but again, they're semi-competitive. So yeah, there's not as much time for friendlies, and as a coach, that's frustrating. For a federation, that's frustrating, because trust me, we want to play the games because we want to give these players an opportunity, but the calendar suggests we just don't have the space. So we'll do it when it's possible, but again, we're tied down to the time that FIFA allow us, and it's getting smaller and smaller every year.
Friendlies and goal scoring as well, not being clinical. You've touched on it a little bit earlier before we went into the insert.
Well, that's right.
Now he talks about congested fixture and not playing on days that seem to be favorable. I see lots of excuses. I don't know how you see that.
I don't see it as excuses. I was in the midst of writing a piece, which I'll probably finish eventually. And I'm not sure it's controversial exactly, but I was going to call it "Are FIFA's the enemies of football?" The reason I was going to call it that is because he's just outlined it. FIFA seem to have an endless list of nonsensical competitions that they want to put on. And there's the danger of killing the goose that laid the golden egg. We know that football has made FIFA very rich, and they seem to think that all these tournaments and mini tournaments are money earners and money spinners, and you get $1 million each country for appearing in it or whatever. But just before we came on air, I was just reading a piece by Pep Guardiola, and he was saying that the world of football needs to stop and take a check. He said we are killing our footballers, not literally. He said, but the number of competitive games that they are being forced to take part in is simply not tenable in the long run.
Without cutting you short, for me, there is too much football already.
There really is.
For even the fans to consume.
You know, okay, we miss it when it's not here, but I'd rather the players had that break for their own sanity. But there's no break. You know, a World Cup will end and 4 or 5 weeks later, competitive matches kick off, or the European Championship and you know, a few weeks later, 4 weeks later, those same players are meant to go back to their clubs and start getting involved in intensive club football. It is simply not tenable. We need to stop and take a check. And the guy there asked about tests, which is what many people here in the Gambia call it, but as McKinstry rightly says, the rest of the world will say a friendly.
Friendlies, yeah.
There simply are not enough windows anymore for friendlies, because every window has been closed, to carry on the analogy, by FIFA saying, oh, there's a window there, let's stick a tournament there. Let's get the champions of, you know, like they brought in this thing, Confederation Cup, where you have the winners of all the various confederations, African champions, European champions, you know, and now they have even more. There was the one they were going to do called the Arab Cup, which was going to be just the Arab nations, and people thought, is that a bit racist? You know, what next? The Anglophone Cup? So they killed it, you know. But they're always thinking up all these ideas for more crazy tournaments. Enough. You know, yes, we love football as fans, but we need that break, we need that pause, and the players need it for their health and for their sanity. You know, and McKinstry is right. There's barely a window open where you can say, okay, let's squeeze in a friendly here. Because guess what? The players you want to call up, he'll say, oh, your club has arranged a friendly, and unless it's a kind of FIFA-sanctioned window, then there's no compulsion for you to be released by the club. They'll say, oh no, we need him for this. Or some club will just fake it and say, oh, my player's injured and, you know, he can't make it, or he's got a slight injury and we want to monitor him. so you'll get all of that. So it's not an excuse. I think it's a genuine reason that the opportunities are simply not there.
Yeah, when it comes to playing on particular days, he talks about playing on a Wednesday or playing on a Tuesday. The Europeans, he specifically mentioned England. I think they do.
I didn't want to counter him there, but you know, you and I follow football, and England regularly play weekday matches bang on a Wednesday. It's not unusual in England at all, or anywhere in Europe. So I'm not sure that one holds water. You know, if you get your players and you have 5 days from the time you get them to the time of the match, then it's fine, it's better, rather than 2 days or 3 days. Of course, it's much better. You can assess them more, you can try out more combinations and more opportunities and so on. And you know, if we go back to the thing you were talking about, the set pieces, you can have more of those, where there are just a whole day could be given over to just set pieces and training to deal with set pieces, free kicks, corners and so on. And the more you do it, the better you are. And again, he mentioned the thing about, you know, somebody plays for a club, the club plays in a particular system. You come to your national team plays a completely different system, no matter how long you and I have been in the team. And yes, as you said, you have players who've been in the team for 10 years, but they've got a new coach now with new ideas and a new style of play. So they have to adapt to that. We have to adapt to that. And you know, if you don't have much time in terms of the training, then you will not get the fruits. You know, what you put in is what you get out. And if you only, as he said, have 55 minutes of training time,
together,
then you know, what can you expect?
Sometimes some of these things has to do with traveling in Africa. Yes, these players play in Europe. Let's say countries like England, countries like Denmark or Sweden. Yes, 7 hours, you're back to Gambia, or you can get direct straight to Morocco and the likes.
But if you play in England, 5.5 hours, and you're there.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're in other countries or maybe playing in another continent, you need to get lots of flight connections. To be able to get to Morocco might take you a whole day or something like that. And if that's the case, then it's like you are going to miss a day.
It is terrible. There are instances where you have to fly from somewhere in West Africa to Turkey to come back to an African country for all sorts of reasons, either because the route is simply not there for the direct flight, or because it's way, way cheaper. I'll give you a quick example. When I flew to a conference in Ghana, in 2019, I saved £500 by flying to London and then to Accra, rather than from taking a series of West African flights to get to Accra. £500 saving on one journey. That's insane. And those are the things. So some of the FAs that don't have a lot of money, they'll say, okay, you're going to have a 24-hour journey to get there. You're tired. You're a human being. Yeah. Even if you sleep on the plane, it's not the same.
It's the same. Absolutely not.
So, it's a big problem. And it's one that, we keep. And, that's why I'm really not happy about us having to still play our games in Morocco. Be great if the players can all just fly here, train here, and play here.
Play here, definitely. Much better.
Yeah.
We'll now go on a short break, and when we come back, we're still going to talk about other points. The coach have dealt with the injury of Ibrahim Dabo in the previous fixture against Tunisia. This is a player who was injured, and then it was announced that he was not going to make the team, and eventually he made the team. He in fact played. What are the circumstances surrounding that? We will get that after the break.
Introducing the all-new Q Mobile. Rediscover the essence of mobile communication with a device that brings you back to basics: quality, simplicity, and reliability. The Q Mobile is designed to fit seamlessly into your life, offering essential features without the fuss. 72-hour battery life, keeping you connected longer. Listen to news, prayers, or your favorite shows with the FM radio on Q Phone. A built-in torchlight, always ready when you need it, memory card slot for expandable storage, and dual SIM capability for flexibility and convenience. Why wait? Step into any of our care centers today and get your hands on the most affordable phone for just $600. Plus, enjoy a bonus package of 300 minutes talk time and 300 SMS spread over 3 months. Absolutely free. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell, senior boss. We innovate, others follow. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, and thank you very much for joining us. This is Q Sports, and I am Mamudu Gajaga. We are talking exclusively about the Gambia squad, the Scorpions, after the coach unveiled his squad to face Madagascar in a double-leg Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers, Morocco 2025. And this is going to be on Friday, the 11th of October, and also the second leg, which is going to be on Monday, the 14th. Those two matches are very crucial. It will definitely have an impact on the standings in Group A, where currently Tunisia, they are like one-man standing somewhere. The top team with 6 points maximum, 100%. And you have the Comoros, after drawing 2 matches for them, they're in second place with 2 points. And then you have the Gambia on a single point. Likewise, Madagascar, who are going to be their next opponents. Well, Ibrahim Dabo is a midfielder who plays for the Gambia, plays in the Italian Serie B, and this was a player who was injured before the Gambia's last game against Tunisia. But as journalists, we always want to find out, because the public asks questions concerning what happens, what was the reason. His injury was announced that he was not going to be part of the team, and all of a sudden we saw him play for his club, make the minutes, in fact had a very good game, and later flew all the way from Italy straight to Morocco and was part of the Gambia team that played against Tunisia. And the understanding was a shoulder injury, but the coach has the clarification about Ibrahim Dabo's injury back then.
Now, you asked specifically about Ibrahim Darbo. So leading into the last camp, if you looked at, they played on Tuesday and then they played on Saturday. So on the Tuesday, so you mentioned the game he played on the Saturday, but you didn't mention the game he played 5 days before, where he came out of the game after, was it 30 or 40 minutes, with a subluxated shoulder. So I don't know if you know what a subluxated shoulder is. It's not quite a dislocation. It's where your shoulder comes out of its socket, but in the moment, your ligaments sort of pull it back in. Yeah, so it's not a nice injury. It's pretty painful, but it's not a full dislocation. So on the Tuesday, Ibrahim subluxated his shoulder. And we got the information about that, and he was going for scans and discussing treatment options. He obviously didn't train for the 2 or 3 days, and we obviously then have to name a squad. So on the Wednesday, I think on the Thursday, in fact, we name a squad. Ibrahima had subluxated his shoulder on the Tuesday. He did not train on the Wednesday or Thursday, and it looked like he was going to be out. He, however, did then attempt training on the Friday at the request of his club coach, heavily strapped, and he played well, even under a little bit of pain, on the Saturday for his club, Frosinone. Me and Ibrahima had a conversation, and I said, look, how does it feel? Do you think it's okay? And he was like, well, it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I didn't think I'd be able to play, even for his club, but I was able to play for 70 minutes. And so, yeah, as long as it's well strapped, it's okay. And so that made the decision easy for us. We'd given ourselves a little bit of flexibility in the squad, and we invited him to come. And then he came and, did quite well in the game. So for us, this is the stuff, and look, I don't expect people outside the room to see these things. This is information that as a coach, as a federation, we've got to deal with, because things change, you know what I mean? Somebody wakes up in the morning and has a bad illness. You didn't know that the day before, you do know it the next day, and you got to make decisions. So with Ibrahima, looked like he wasn't going to be ready. That changed pretty quickly. He was ready, he wanted to come, he came, he was a valuable part of the squad. You ask about this camp, who is out injured. So Hamza Barry, unfortunately, went for a scan on his hamstring yesterday. There's a little bit of blood showing on the scans. I spoke to him this morning. He's not going to be in his match day squad, or at least he maybe is on the bench tomorrow. But yeah, the hamstring's not in a great position. He needs to rest and recover. He's out. Alassane Diatta is a player that we would like to have in this squad. However, there's a couple of things with Alassane. You've seen he's been in and out of his team at Notts County recently. He suffered a pretty heavy concussion a few weeks ago, and it meant he's been out. He sort of came back a bit too early a couple of weeks ago, and then he was out again for 2 games, and then he played again 2 days ago and got the goal. Alassane, first of all, the concussion was a proper concussion. So a few weeks ago, the concussion, I'm pleased to say, has recovered. He's not getting headaches anymore. However, because he's not really played a lot in the last few weeks, you might have seen, and if you watched the game for Notts County, he came off of heavy cramp. And so again, Alassane and I had a good conversation where he just doesn't feel he's at 100%. And he would rather wait until he's 100% before he comes, which he knows is stepping up a level to play for the Scorpions. It's a higher level than at Notts County. And so we decided this camp not quite yet, because he's not 100%. I'm trying to think who other injury-wise there is. Just some players who are out who have been involved recently. Seni Sanyang is fit, but since the last camp hasn't played any minutes for his club side. Adama Sidibe obviously has done really well for the Scorpions recently, but hasn't played a single minute due to suspension at St Johnstone. He got a red card and has been out suspended, so he's out. I'm trying to think, is there any other obvious ones that you want me to comment on? There's only a few injuries. It's more the guys who are missing out. It's more about they haven't been getting the minutes we would like them to get.
Yes, a combination of so many things there. Not only the Ibrahima Dabo injury, but he talked about players who are not in, and the reason why. One notable is Alassane Diatta, who's been in fine form before that concoction he was talking about for Notts County in the English League One.
League One, and I think they're the oldest football club that's still in existence. No other club that was formed in the year they were formed is still going. So I think it's the world's oldest football club, Notts County. So a club with quite an interesting history. Never had it kind of great in terms of winning. Their neighbours, Nottingham Forest, of course, had some glory years, English champions and European champions twice. But Alassane Diatta, you said you're right. He's been in good form, and the team had been in kind of decent form. But when you have a player who has, firstly, concussion, then they come back, very shortly after that, and then that player gets cramp, it's probably a warning sign to you that, you know what, that person's body needs to recover. They don't need the possibility of playing a league match and then have to travel for an international match. So, you know, his exclusion is probably one that can be easily explained, and others have either gotten injuries or they've not had game time with their clubs. And you and I and every Gambian fan used to slag off Tom Samfier for playing players who hadn't had any minutes
in their teams
for their club sides. So we don't want that, no matter how good you are or how, you know, much we love you. If you're not doing it on the pitch and you're not getting the game time, then really you should not be anywhere near the squad when a squad is announced. But that's what an international manager has to juggle with. You can only play with the ones who are eligible to play for that country. He gave the analogy of if you're Real Madrid and you want a centre-back or whatever position, you say, I'll spend 100 million euros. You don't have that luxury as an international manager. You get whatever hand geography has dealt you. So players who have a right to play for that country are the only ones you can pick. And based on that, you pick who's available and who's on form. And of course that's what he has to do. So yes, there will always be players who are missing from every round of squad, you know, every time a squad is named. But, you know, you go with the ones who are in form and the ones who, you know, have done it for you. And so it's a combination of things. Touched on earlier, we didn't go into it, the younger players who people have been rooting for and saying, you know, give them a try. Well, some of them, you bring them into the squad.
Exactly.
You bring them into the camp,
and
but they don't get game time.
Exactly, and that's going to be my next point. In fact, let's go there first.
Right, sorry.
Yes, young players, giving them opportunities.
Right.
This is the coach's response in that.
Right.
We'll get in there.
So I think everyone would agree that when you come into any team dynamic, you've got to get used to the way of working. You know, so whether you start a new job, that you have to work with other people. So in the media, you've got to work with other people. And your first day on the job, you maybe don't know everything that your new radio station or TV station do. And you've got to get used to other people before you hit top performance. Yeah, that would be an agreeable thing in most walks of life. In football, it's even more so because tactically, one team does not play the same as another team. Yeah, so if you look at Arsenal, they don't play the same as Manchester City or Barcelona. So when you move from one team to another, you've got to integrate into that. So when you have someone like Abdoulaye Cissé who comes into the national team, we were really pleased with him in the last camp. But he still is evolving and developing that connection with the teammates around him. Historically, for me, players who come to their very first national team camp don't usually get lots of minutes. Sometimes they do if they're a really high quality player, if they turn up and hey, they have a 10 out of 10 week and they're just the best player in the training sessions, then yes, they get their minutes. But the nature of football is it usually takes more than 2 or 3 days to integrate into a new team. Yes, all of these guys are Gambian, but that doesn't mean they know how to play well together yet. And so we're really pleased with Abdoulaye. And so do I expect he has a better chance of getting minutes in this camp compared to the last camp? Yes, because he will have had more time with his teammates. He'll know the passes people like to play. His teammates will know the type of runs he needs to play. Because you've got to remember, the guys like Ebu Adams or Moussa Barrow or Ablaye Diallo, when they turned up on the Monday, Tuesday before we played Comoros, that was the first time any of them had ever played with Abdoulaye Cissé. And so you can understand that the connection isn't quite there yet. It's not a computer game. You don't just throw them out there. So, you know, the young guys, it's not a must that when you come to the national team, you play in your first camp. Sometimes it's about integrating, and over the long term, you become a really valuable asset for us. But like I said, that doesn't rule out, look, if someone turns up and they're just, you know, destroying it in training, then of course they play.
So, quite important points there when it comes to integrating young players into the national team. Your reaction?
Yeah, I'm integrating any players, to be honest. you know, sometimes I get into discussions with people about coaches, and they'll say, you know, why doesn't this coach pick that person or that person? And I always, my answer is always the same. The coach will pick the players that he believes can deliver according to the plans that he has. No coach is going to leave on the bench somebody, or not even include in the squad somebody that he thinks can do it for him. Because guess what? You lose a couple of matches, it could cost you your job.
Yeah.
So you're not going to jeopardize your job by not picking the strongest side that's available to you. But sometimes they stick with players because they think, I know this player knows me and knows my tactics, always obeys what I want when I give instructions. And so you pick players based on that. But you don't leave good players if you think they can be, like he says, a game changer. If somebody in training has shown that they can be a 10 out of 10, you'd pick that person. Why wouldn't you? You know, so some of the young players, you bring them in gently. You bring them in by introducing them into the squad. You see how they cope in the training sessions, and you put them in kind of, you know, my strongest first 11 against my next 11. Let them play against each other in a kind of closed door training session. You see how they perform, and then you swap a couple of players. See, okay, you with this person, you with that person. How will you gel? And then if you think, oh, this person's showing great promise, they might be young, but I think I'll throw them in. And if you think they're up to it, you will do, because like I said, your job is at stake every time they take to the pitch, you know. So you would always try and field the team that you think can deliver according to what your plans and your ambitions are. You're not going to pick a team that's going to fail and then cost you your job.
Yes, coaches usually do that. We're now going to open the phone lines for you to call in and have your say concerning Gambia's national team, the coach selection. What do you make of it? And Gambia playing against Madagascar in a double leg. What's your opinion about our chances of qualification? Are they very, very good, or are they moderate, or maybe there's no chance at all? You can call on the number on the screen, 5050505. That's the number for you to call on the show if you want to have your say. Talking about one player who broke into a national team at a very young age and doing well is Lamine Camara of Senegal. Without doing comparisons, this is the player who comes into the Africa Cup of Nations, it blows up in the match the way he scored the two magnificent goals.
How could we forget? Absolutely. And so that's the perfect example of bringing in a young player who you think this player is ready. This player can do it. And of course, you know, it's a pity we didn't get a chance to delve into Abdoulaye Cissé not getting his contract renewed, by the way. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, if you have a player who you think, as we said earlier, if you think they can do it, you'll bring them in. You know, and it'll be interesting to hear what people have to say in terms of the fans, because our expectations have been raised. We've qualified for the last two AFCONs. We now believe it's our right that every time we should, not that it's going to be handed to us on a plate, but we feel we deserve to be there because we've shown that we deserve to be there.
Yeah, definitely. So when it comes to young players for national teams, some of them have really proven to be very good in terms of coming into the team and also delivering, sometimes even maybe beyond expectations.
Beyond expectations. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, there are others who, you know, we've seen it around the world. I mean, football, it's a global game. There have been instances that we can pluck from everywhere where people have been brought in rather too young and not, I mean, people might not believe this, but, you know, Maradona could have made the World Cup, you know, squad 4 years before he did. He was that good. The great Maradona.
Maradona, exactly.
And yet they thought, no, his time will come. And sure enough, his time came. But, you know, it could have been a case where his time never came. You know, exactly. But they had him join the squad, even though he didn't play a single minute, you know, when they won the World Cup that was played in Argentina, because he was too young, you know. But, you know, they kind of, so it's a difficult one to judge, because there are players who you bring, and you bring them too early. And if they have a disappointment, it can break them. Break them
completely, yeah.
You know?
That happens. Yeah,
and that happens, and we've seen it happen around the world, where at other times there are players who there's no way except they're so good, you just have to play them. And you talk about Lamine Camara, you know, how could they leave him out? You know, and we saw devastatingly what he's capable of. Absolutely.
Is there a smart way of integrating them, like playing them in friendlies first and look at their capabilities? Or you can kind of do a gamble where they play in specific roles and you are kind of short of that in your team, or the player who is playing in that position haven't given quite well, and then you try to get the player in?
What some coaches used to do in the old days, I don't know if any of them still do it, is that when you had that sort of situation and you didn't have friendlies planned where you could play the players, you would have the new players that you were trying to introduce play against a team of 12 whilst they are only 8 or 9 on a full-size pitch, and to see how they cope with that pressure of, okay, there's 8 of us, we're playing 12 men on the other side. How do we do it? Because it's never a case of that. It's always 11 against or 11, or if somebody gets sent off 10 against 10 or whatever. Yeah. But they wanted to see how you could cope with when the odds are stacked against you, because you've come from youth football where you've been the boss, you've done it, you've been there, done it, got everything. How can you do in the senior game? And there are no friendlies planned, and so what they used to do in a kind of closed door session, they'd have 8 against 12 or 11 against 9 or whatever.
I think we have our first caller. Hello?
Cool.
Hello?
Yes, good morning.
Yes.
Yes, we're talking about the Gambia national team. What do you want to say? Hello, caller. Yes.
Don't be shy.
I think that might be a shy person there.
Yes, indeed. So we're saying to all the viewers, if you do want to call us and just throw any questions at us. Just remember the topic is the squad that's been selected for the 2 games against Madagascar in October next weekend, and exciting squad. And he's picked all. Well, please don't ask us about players who are not in the team, and the coach has already said why they're not in the team because of injury or unavailability or whatever.
Yeah, so. I think just as we're getting very close to the end of the program, we can sneak in the Aliou Cisse story. Just wrap it up.
Yeah,
Senegal coach for a very long time, won AFCON with them, qualified to 2 successive World Cups, and then had a good performance, but a little bit disappointing in the last AFCON, and then lately Senegal hasn't been playing well. His contract not renewed, and now there is the assistant coach who is in charge of the team.
That's right. They've not been blowing teams away, and that's been. But what surprised me, because I've been following the Senegalese media since some of his teammates came out in support of him, saying that it was ungrateful that they didn't renew his contract, that this is just a kind of rough patch that they're going through and they'll get over it. He's shown that he's the man who can do a job for them. But the public backlash, if you go on the Senegalese Football Federation's page on Facebook,
yes,
boy, people are saying nobody's entitled to this job.
Yes.
I mean, the comments have been really, I was surprised. There
Yeah.
were a few in support of him, but people were saying, no, he become complacent, there was a sense of entitlement, and let somebody else have a chance. They might live to regret it. Yeah. But I was surprised.
Okay, we have a caller. Hello.
Yes.
Yes. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Yes, what's your comment about Gambia Scorpions, the selection?
Yes, I would like to.
Yes, can you please
good morning,
turn down the volume of your television and just listen to us on the telephone?
Fine, thank you, brother.
And tell us your name.
Well, I would like to comment.
Yes, you're already on air.
But,
Go on.
yeah. But before then, I would like to know our stance at this moment.
We are having a single point in the standing so far
From
after
2
2
games.
games.
Yeah, through your commentary, I can understand that we have in Madagascar on the double legs, is it?
Yes, double leg, yes. On Friday and also on a Monday. On the 11th and the
Yeah,
14th.
I'm very optimistic about our team. I hope and wish that we win that both legs.
Oh, okay.
So that can give us a better
Standing, okay. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Bundung Bohol, but I'll reserve my name, please.
Okay, all right then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's very interesting.
All right, appreciate it. And then that's it for Q Sports this afternoon. And then until we come your way next week at the same time, keep on sporting and have a lovely, lovely, wonderful Saturday. Bye.